Before the war, there were tremendous development in aircraft technology. In 1911, the Italians were at war with Turkey and Libya. They were the first to use and make the military airplanes. Italians were also the first to drop grenades from a German-built monoplane. At the outbreak of the war, airplanes were only 13 years old, and at the beginning of the war, Americans were largely supplied with second-rate weapons and good aircraft. Though as the Americans' number increased, the equipment improved. When America first entered the war, they depended on the French and Britain industries for combat aircraft. Typical aircraft in 1914 could only carry pilots and started to add machine guns to the planes at the beginning of the war. That is where the name fighter plane came from. The first aircraft from the beginning of the war were unarmed and used for observation, also called as reconnaissance.
The Fokker Scourge. The Fokker Scourge happened in 1915. In 1915, the Germans had created a plane called the Fokker Eindecker. This was the first plane to have synchronized gear. Having synchronized gear meant that the fighter would be able to shoot a machine gun and not hit the propeller. This plane was made in Germany, a now fair if not stronger competitor against the Allies when it came to aviation. This led the Germans to be the top of air superiority. As competition does, this forced the Allies to make a more suitable opponent. They created the FE-2B and the DH-2. Although they could fire, they didn't have synchronized gear. These Fokker planes would later create a new standard to airplane making.
During the First World War, the month of April 1917 was known as Bloody April by the Royal Flying Corps. It was called Bloody April because there was a lot of casualties, especially in the air. One famous battle was the Battle of Arras on April 9, 1917. The RFC sent out 25 squadrons totaling 365 aircrafts. The British had lost a total of 245 aircrafts, 211 aircrews had been killed or gone missing, and 108 were prisoners of war. The Germans lost 66 aircrafts in various causes also.
At the start of war, airplanes were only 13 years old. Planes were initially used to deliver bombs and to spy. They later became armed with machine guns, bombs, and sometimes cannons. There were many types of airplanes with different uses. At first, the Germans used the Zeppelin to foresee the war and as well to carry bombs and machine guns to soldiers.
At the start of the war, planes were a very new form of technology. France started off the war with only 140 planes, and by the end of the war had around 4,500. Roland Garros was the first Frenchman to fly over the Mediterranean. With the help of another Frenchman, he was able to add the machine gun to the airplane. As airplanes developed, this new technology and new type of battle developed. Battle in the air, also known as dogfights. As these fights became more popular, countries started awarding aces. To be awarded an ace was a great. To be awarded this in France, you had to shoot down 5 planes, and in Germany 8.
As dogfights became more popular, the need for a new plane arose. The problem was with the first types of planes, there was no synchronized gear. This meant that when the pilot would try to shoot the bullets, it would hit the propeller. The first plane to have synchronized gear was the Fokker Eindecker, which was a better version of the Garros plane. This plane was so good that the German air pilots were told not to cross the border in fear that the Allies would steal their plane. Eventually, the Allies caught up, making planes like the Nieuport 11 and the Royal Aircraft Factory FE-2, which had an alternative to the synchronized gear. After the war, countries had figured out how to make even more advanced planes that could last for 8 hours instead of 3. At this time, regular aircraft was now being designed for even more speed. Their airplanes were easier to handle and could now carry bombs. Unfortunately, the end of war also caused shortages of supplies for the Central Powers. France alone produced 68,000 planes and lost 77% of these planes in World War I. Though, for the Americans, its squadrons had improved at the end of the war. They began patrolling the skies above the trenches, whereas when the World War first began, they had just got together. In the book All Quiet on the Western Front,
Paul Beimer is assigned to guard an abandoned town with his troops. He remarks about how loud bombs sound when the airplanes drop them. He is also making potato cakes when the enemy starts dropping bombs on the house and continues to make the potato cakes all while planes are dropping bombs around him.